Imagine waking up every morning without the weight of fear holding you back. No racing heart over uncertain decisions, no sleepless nights consumed by what ifs, and no overwhelming panic about what the future might hold. Instead, picture a life where you approach challenges with a calm mind and steady confidence, embracing every twist and turn as part of a greater journey. Fear, after all, is a universal experience. Whether it's the fear of failure, rejection, loss, or even the unknown, it quietly shapes our choices, limits our dreams, and keeps us confined in a prison of doubt. But what if I told you that this prison has no locks, and the key to freedom lies within you? For over 2,500 years, Buddhist teachings have offered profound wisdom for understanding and transcending fear. These teachings don't promise an instant cure, but provide tools to help you shift your mindset, embrace life with courage, and find lasting peace. They show us that fear is not the enemy, it's a messenger, a fleeting emotion that we can learn from and ultimately overcome. In this exploration, we'll uncover 6 transformative lessons from Buddhism that can help you face your fears, step into your power, and truly change your life. But this isn't just about theory, this is about action. Along the way, you'll discover relatable stories, practical techniques, and fresh perspectives that will inspire you to take the first step toward a life of courage, and clarity. So, take a deep breath. Let's step into this journey together and uncover the wisdom that will guide you not only to conquer your fears, but to embrace the life you were always meant to live. Lesson 1. Embrace impermanence. One of the most profound lessons from Buddhism is the concept of impermanence, or anicca. The Buddha taught that everything in life is in a constant state of change. Our thoughts, emotions, relationships, and even the fears we cling to so tightly. While this truth may initially feel unsettling, it holds the key to liberation from fear. Fear often arises when we resist change. We cling to the comfort of what we know, hoping to preserve it forever. But life doesn't work that way. Whether it's the fear of losing a loved one, a job, or even our own health, we suffer because we refuse to accept the transient nature of life. Yet once we deeply understand that nothing stays the same, a shift occurs. Fear starts to lose its power over us. A story of embracing impermanence. Consider the story of Min, a man who worked tirelessly to build his dream business. For years, it was his source of pride, identity, and stability. But when an unexpected economic downturn hit, Min found himself on the verge of bankruptcy. At first, he was paralyzed with fear. How could he face losing everything he had worked so hard for? In his desperation, Min turned to mindfulness practices he had once learned in a Buddhist temple. He reflected on the teaching of impermanence. This too shall pass. Slowly, he began to understand that clinging to his business as if it were permanent was the root of his suffering. Min started to let go of his attachment to the idea that his success defined him. What happened next was remarkable. Freed from his fear of loss, Min was able to think creatively and find a new path forward. He repurposed his skills into a different career and found a deeper sense of purpose in the process. The fear that had once consumed him became a stepping stone toward personal growth. Practical steps to embrace impermanence. 1. Reflect on change around you. Spend time observing the impermanence of the world. Notice how seasons change, flowers bloom and wither, and days turn into nights. This practice helps ground you in the reality that nothing remains fixed. 2. Let go of the illusion of control. Instead of clinging to outcomes, focus on your actions in the present. Understand that some aspects of life are beyond your control, and resisting this truth only deepens your suffering. 3. Practice gratitude in the moment. When you understand that everything is temporary, you begin to cherish the present more deeply. Instead of fearing the loss of a good moment, savor it while it lasts. 4. Use affirmations. Remind yourself, this is temporary. Whether you're going through a difficult time or enjoying a period of happiness, acknowledging impermanence helps you face life with equanimity. The gift of impermanence. Embracing impermanence doesn't mean becoming detached from life or emotionless. On the contrary, it teaches us to live fully in the present. When you accept that both joy and fear are temporary, you free yourself from the need to control everything. Instead of resisting change, you learn to flow with it, finding strength in life's unpredictability. Next time you find yourself overwhelmed by fear, pause and reflect. Will this matter a year from now? 5 years from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. By grounding yourself in the understanding of impermanence, you'll realize that fear, like everything else, will eventually pass. Lesson 2. See the illusion of fear. Fear is one of the most pervasive emotions, but what if much of what we fear isn't real? The Buddha taught that many of our experiences, including fear, are illusions created by the mind. Fear often stems from our imagination, what might happen, what could go wrong, or worst-case scenarios that may never come to pass. By recognizing fear as a mental construct rather than an absolute truth, we can begin to dismantle its power over us. Think about the fears you faced in your life. How many of them actually came true? More often than not, the what-ifs we obsess over remain hypothetical. This doesn't mean that fear is invalid. It's a natural response to perceived danger, but it does mean that we need to question its reality. A story of seeing fear's illusion. Imagine a young woman named Lan, who had always dreamed of starting her own art studio. For years, she let fear hold her back. She worried about failure, financial instability, and the judgment of others. In her mind, she could vividly see herself losing money, disappointing her family, and being mocked for her dreams. One day, Lan shared her fears with a monk during a temple visit. The monk handed her a glass of water and asked, "What happens if you drop this glass?" Lan replied, "It will break." "Exactly," said the monk. "But look closely. Is it broken now?" "No," she said. "Then why are you suffering over something that hasn't even happened?" This moment shifted Lan's perspective. She realized that her fear of failure was based on a story her mind had created, not her reality. Encouraged by this insight, she took her first step toward opening her studio. Although she faced challenges, none of her worst fears materialized. How fear plays tricks on the mind. 1. Anticipation of the worst. Fear thrives on the anticipation of negative outcomes. We imagine failing an exam, losing a job, or being rejected in relationships, even when there's no concrete evidence these outcomes will occur. 2. Magnification of threats. The mind has a way of blowing potential risks out of proportion. A small presentation at work suddenly feels like the most important moment of your career, creating unnecessary anxiety. 3. Attachment to comfort zones. Fear often masquerades as a protector, discouraging us from stepping outside our comfort zones. But growth requires discomfort, and fear is a sign that we're about to grow. Practical steps to see fear for what it is. 1. Label your fear. When a fearful thought arises, pause and name it. For example, "This is my fear of failure speaking." Labeling fear creates distance between you and the emotion, making it easier to observe objectively. Examine the evidence. Ask yourself, is this fear based on facts, or is it just a story my mind is telling me? Write down what supports or contradicts your fear. This exercise often reveals that fear is exaggerated or unfounded. Shift your focus. Instead of fixating on what might go wrong, shift your attention to what could go right. Reframing fear as an opportunity for growth can transform it into a motivator rather than a deterrent. 4. Take small steps. Facing fear doesn't mean diving headfirst into the unknown. Start small. If you're afraid of public speaking, begin by practicing in front of a mirror or a close friend. Incremental steps build confidence and reduce fear's grip. Transforming fear into growth. Fear is not the enemy, it's a signal. It often arises when we are about to step into something meaningful, something that challenges us to grow. The next time fear arises, instead of running from it, pause and ask, what is this fear trying to teach me? What opportunity is it pointing me toward? By seeing fear for what it truly is, an illusion created by the mind, you strip it of its power. Fear becomes less about avoidance and more about understanding. And with understanding comes the freedom to act, to move forward, and to live with courage. Lesson 3. Cultivate mindfulness. Mindfulness, or sati, is one of the most transformative tools in Buddhist teachings for overcoming fear. Fear often resides in the realm of the past or future. We relive painful memories or anticipate unfavorable outcomes. Rarely does fear exist in the present moment. Through mindfulness, we anchor ourselves to the now, creating space between ourselves and our fears. This practice helps us approach life's challenges with calm, clarity, and a sense of inner stability. A story of facing fear with mindfulness. A young man named Dewey struggled with debilitating anxiety about his career. Every night, his mind raced with fears about losing his job, failing his boss, and being unable to provide for his family. He was so consumed by these thoughts that he struggled to sleep, and his health began to deteriorate. Desperate for relief, Dewey visited a Zen temple where a monk taught him a simple mindfulness exercise. Each time you feel fear, stop and focus on your breath. Feel the air entering your nose, filling your lungs, and leaving your body. If your mind wanders, gently return to your breath. Dewey began practicing this technique daily. Slowly, he noticed a change. When fears arose, he no longer spiraled into worst-case scenarios. Instead, he observed the thoughts, recognized them as fleeting, and returned to his breath. Over time, his anxiety diminished, and he began approaching his work with newfound confidence. The power of the present moment. Fear feeds on uncertainty, often about events that haven't happened or things we can't control. By grounding ourselves in the present, we neutralize fear's power. Mindfulness doesn't eliminate fear, it teaches us to coexist with it peacefully. 1. Fear in the future. Fear is fueled by what-if scenarios. What if I fail? What if I lose someone I love? These questions pull us into the future, robbing us of the present moment. 2. Fear in the past. Past failures and traumas often resurface as fear. We relive moments of pain, convincing ourselves that history will repeat itself. Mindfulness allows us to acknowledge these memories without letting them control us. Mindfulness as a refuge. The present moment is a safe haven where fear cannot thrive. When we focus on what is happening right now, our breath, the sounds around us, or the sensations in our body, we break free from fear's grasp. Practices for cultivating mindfulness. 1. Mindful breathing. One of the simplest yet most powerful mindfulness practices is focusing on the breath. Take a few deep breaths, noticing the air as it moves in and out of your body. Each time your mind wanders to fearful thoughts, gently return your focus to your breathing. 2. Body scan meditation. Fear often manifests physically, such as a racing heart or tense shoulders. Lie down or sit comfortably, and slowly bring your attention to each part of your body. Notice any sensations, tension, or discomfort without judgment. This practice helps you connect with your body and release stored fear. 3. Labeling your thoughts. When fearful thoughts arise, acknowledge them without judgment. For example, if you're worried about an upcoming presentation, mentally note, here is fear of failure. By labeling the thought, you separate yourself from it, reducing its emotional charge. 4. Mindful observation. Take a moment to observe your surroundings. Notice the colors, shapes, and textures around you. This practice pulls you out of your mind and anchors you to the present moment where fear has less influence. The benefits of mindfulness in fear management. 1. Emotional regulation. Mindfulness creates a gap between stimulus and response. When fear arises, instead of reacting impulsively, you can pause, observe, and choose a thoughtful response. 2. Increased awareness. By practicing mindfulness, you become more aware of the triggers and patterns of your fear. This awareness empowers you to address the root causes rather than just the symptoms. 3. Resilience. Fear becomes less overwhelming when you know how to return to the present moment. Mindfulness builds resilience, allowing you to face challenges with greater equanimity and confidence. Facing fear through mindfulness, a practical example. Imagine you're preparing for an important job interview, and fear begins to creep in. Your mind races with thoughts like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I say the wrong thing? Instead of letting these fears take over, pause and try this. Sit quietly and close your eyes. Take slow, deep breaths, focusing on the sensation of air entering and leaving your nose. When a fearful thought arises, acknowledge it. Here is fear of failure. Then let it go and return to your breath. By the time you finish this exercise, you'll likely feel calmer and more grounded, ready to approach the interview with clarity, transforming fear with presence. Mindfulness teaches us that fear is just a passing thought, not an unchangeable reality. The next time fear arises, resist the urge to fight or flee. Instead, pause, breathe, and bring your attention back to the present moment. Over time, This practice will transform your relationship with fear. Rather than being controlled by it, you'll see fear as an opportunity to practice awareness, patience, and compassion. As the Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. By cultivating mindfulness, you can reshape your mind, reduce fear, and live with greater peace and presence. Lesson 4. Understand the nature of suffering. In Buddhism, suffering, or dukkha, is one of the most essential truths to understand. The Buddha's teachings often start with the acknowledgement of suffering, not as a pessimistic view, but as a compassionate observation of human existence. By understanding the nature of suffering, we can uncover the root causes of fear and learn to transcend it. Short, the first noble truth, accepting suffering. The Buddha's first noble truth is simple yet profound. Life is marked by suffering. This includes obvious forms of suffering, such as illness, loss, and death, as well as subtler ones, like dissatisfaction, craving, or fear of change. Recognizing this universal truth is the first step toward liberation. Many of our fears stem from an aversion to suffering. We fear pain, loss, rejection, and uncertainty. But instead of running from suffering, Buddhism invites us to face it with openness and curiosity. A story of acceptance. A farmer once came to the Buddha deeply troubled. My crops fail in drought, my animals die in storms, my wife and children sometimes anger me. What can you do to help me? The Buddha replied, I cannot help you with these problems. Everyone has 83 problems in life and no one can solve them all. The farmer, confused, asked, Then what's the point of your teaching? The Buddha smiled. I can help you with the 84th problem, the belief that you should not have problems. This story reminds us that suffering is an inevitable part of life. Trying to escape it only creates more fear and resistance. The root causes of suffering. According to the Buddha, suffering arises from 3 primary causes, often referred to as the 3 poisons. 1. Attachment, raga. We cling to things we desire, believing they will bring lasting happiness. When we fear losing them, suffering emerges. 2. Aversion, dvesha. We reject or avoid things we dislike, fearing pain or discomfort. This resistance often intensifies suffering. 3. Ignorance, moha. We misunderstand the nature of reality, believing in permanence or self-importance. This ignorance keeps us trapped in cycles of fear and suffering. Understanding these causes helps us see that much of our suffering and the fears it creates is self-imposed. Fear and the nature of suffering. Fear arises when we try to control what is beyond our power or resist what is inevitable. For example, fear of loss stems from attachment to people, possessions, or status. Fear of failure arises from aversion to discomfort and judgment. Fear of the unknown is rooted in ignorance about life's impermanence. By addressing these root causes, we can diminish the hold fear has over us. Pashtrash, practices for understanding suffering. 1. Contemplate the 4 noble truths. Reflect on these truths regularly. Life includes suffering. Suffering has causes. Suffering can be overcome. There is a path to liberation. This contemplation helps you view fear and suffering as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles. 2. Practice non-attachment. When you notice fear of losing something, whether a loved one, a job, or a possession, remind yourself of its impermanence. Practice gratitude for the present moment without clinging to it. 3. Embrace change. Change is a natural part of life, yet we often resist it. Instead, try welcoming change as a teacher, showing you the fluid nature of existence. 4. Meditate on impermanence. Sit quietly and observe how everything around you is in constant motion. Your breath, your thoughts, the sounds around you. This practice helps you accept life's impermanence and reduces fear of loss. The liberation of letting go. When we stop fighting suffering and start understanding it, a profound shift occurs. We no longer see fear as the enemy, but as a messenger, guiding us toward deeper self-awareness and compassion. The Buddha said, "Pain is certain, but suffering is optional." By learning to accept and understand suffering, we loosen fear's grip on our lives. Instead of avoiding discomfort, we learn to face it with equanimity, knowing that it too will pass. The path forward. To transcend fear, we must go beyond simply managing it. By understanding the nature of suffering and its causes, we gain insight into the patterns that create fear in the first place. This wisdom is the foundation of true peace and freedom. Lesson 5. Develop compassion and loving kindness. Fear thrives in isolation. It grows when we focus inward, consumed by worries about our own well-being, failures, or insecurities. One of the most transformative Buddhist practices for overcoming fear is the cultivation of compassion, karuna, and loving kindness, metta. These practices shift the focus outward, connecting us with others and dissolving fear through empathy and goodwill. What is compassion and loving kindness? A heartfelt desire to alleviate the suffering of others. It is rooted in recognizing that suffering is a universal experience shared by all beings. Loving kindness, a wish for all beings to experience happiness, peace, and freedom from suffering, regardless of who they are or what they've done. When we develop these qualities, we transform fear into courage, selfishness into generosity, and anxiety into inner calm. Fear as a barrier to connection. Fear often isolates us, making us feel alone in our struggles. For instance, fear of rejection can prevent us from forming deep relationships. Fear of judgment can hold us back from expressing our true selves. Fear of harm can make us suspicious of others, creating barriers. Compassion and loving kindness break down these barriers. By focusing on the well-being of others, we see that we are not alone in our fears. This connection diminishes the power of fear and fosters a sense of unity. A story of compassion, the brave monk. There's a well-known Buddhist story about a monk meditating in a forest. One evening, a ferocious tiger approached him. Instead of running or panicking, the monk stayed still, radiating loving kindness. He sent thoughts of peace to the tiger, thinking, "May you be free from suffering. May you find happiness." To everyone's amazement, the tiger stopped in its tracks, calmed by the monk's peaceful energy, and walked away. This story illustrates how compassion and loving kindness, even in the face of fear, can transform situations and dissolve tension. How compassion reduces fear. Shifting perspective. Compassion takes the focus off ourselves and our fears, allowing us to see the broader picture. When we recognize others' struggles, our own fears seem less overwhelming. 2. Creating inner strength. Acts of compassion strengthen our hearts. When we reach out to help others, we cultivate courage. Fear no longer dominates because our energy is directed towards something greater than ourselves. 3. Building connections. Fear often stems from the illusion of separateness. Compassion reminds us that all beings are interconnected, fostering a sense of safety and belonging. How to cultivate loving kindness. 1. Metta meditation. Loving kindness meditation is a cornerstone of Buddhist practice. Here's a simple guide. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Begin by focusing on yourself. Silently repeat, "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease." Gradually extend these wishes to others, a loved one, a neutral person, someone you find difficult, and finally, all beings. This practice softens the heart, reduces fear of others, and fosters compassion. Practice small acts of kindness. Start with simple gestures, a smile, a kind word, or helping someone in need. These actions remind you of your connection to others and weaken fear's hold. 3. Empathize with others' fears. The next time someone acts out of fear, perhaps with anger or avoidance, try to see their humanity. Understand that they too are struggling with their own suffering. This perspective replaces judgment with empathy, overcoming fear through service. Compassion in action. Serving others is one of the most effective ways to overcome fear. When you volunteer, help a neighbor, or support a friend, your focus shifts from your own fears to uplifting others. This selfless engagement naturally dissolves anxiety and replaces it with purpose and fulfillment. The lesson of universal suffering. The Buddha often reminded his followers that suffering is universal. When we recognize this, it's easier to feel compassion, even for those we dislike or fear. For instance, the person who criticizes you may be acting out of their own insecurity. The colleague who seems distant might be battling private fears. By extending compassion to all, we weaken fear's grip and foster a world of greater understanding. The freedom of an open heart. Compassion and loving kindness don't just benefit others, they transform us. When our hearts are open, fear has no room to grow. We become stronger, more peaceful, and more connected to the world around us. As the Buddha taught, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. Lesson 6. Cultivate patience. Patience, or Shanti in Buddhism, is a profound practice that empowers us to endure challenges with grace and composure. Fear often arises from impatience, our desire for immediate results, clarity, or control. Cultivating patience enables us to face uncertainty and discomfort with resilience, gradually dissolving fear's grip on our lives. What is patience in Buddhism? Patience is not passive resignation or indifference. It's an active and courageous acceptance of life's unpredictability. It involves enduring difficulties without frustration, tolerating discomfort without losing hope, and allowing time for things to unfold naturally. As the Buddha said, a person who masters patience masters everything else. The link between fear and impatience. Fear often stems from the inability to tolerate uncertainty or delay. Consider these scenarios. Fear of the unknown. We panic because we don't know what lies ahead, wanting immediate answers or guarantees. Fear of failure. We fear the time it might take to succeed, impatient for quick results. Fear of discomfort. We rush to escape painful emotions, afraid that they will linger forever. Impatience magnifies these fears, making them seem insurmountable. Patience, on the other hand, gives us the strength to sit with fear, observe it, and watch it dissolve over time. A story of patience, the farmer and the bamboo tree. There's a story of a farmer who planted a bamboo seed. He watered it every day and nothing happened. The second year passed, and still there was no growth. Friends began to mock him, saying he was wasting his time. The farmer remained patient and continued nurturing the seed. Finally, in the 5th year, the bamboo sprouted, and within 6 weeks, it grew over 90 feet tall. The lesson? Growth and change take time. Fear, like the bamboo seed, can seem immovable, but with patience, transformation becomes inevitable. How patience dissolves fear. 1. Creating space for fear to subside. Fear is like a storm. It feels overwhelming, but eventually passes. Patience allows us to endure fear without rushing to escape it. This calm endurance weakens fear's intensity over time. 2. Building inner strength. Each time we wait through fear without reacting impulsively, we build resilience. Patience is like a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes. 3. Accepting life's timing. Fear often arises when we try to control outcomes. Patience helps us trust that life will unfold as it should, reducing the anxiety that comes from striving for control. How to cultivate patience. 1. Practice mindful waiting. The next time you feel impatient, whether in traffic, a long queue, or during an emotional challenge, pause and take a deep breath. Notice the sensations in your body and the thoughts in your mind. Remind yourself that this moment is temporary. 2. Reframe delays as opportunities. Instead of seeing delays as obstacles, view them as opportunities to grow. For example, waiting for a promotion can teach perseverance, and enduring emotional pain can foster self-awareness. Start small. Begin with manageable challenges. For instance, when your internet is slow, resist the urge to get frustrated. Use the moment to practice patience. 4. Meditate on patience. In your meditation, reflect on times when impatience led to regret. Contrast this with moments when patience brought positive outcomes. Patience in fearful situations. Imagine standing at the edge of a decision that terrifies you. Perhaps it's starting a new career, ending a toxic relationship, or speaking in public. Fear tells you to rush or retreat. Patience, however, allows you to sit with the fear, analyze it, and act when the time feels right. Overcoming fear of discomfort. Fear often arises from the discomfort we feel in challenging situations. For instance, speaking to a large audience might bring sweaty palms and a racing heart. Waiting for medical test results might cause sleepless nights. Patience teaches us to endure these sensations without resistance. By accepting discomfort as part of the process, we realize that it's temporary and not as unbearable as it seems. A teaching from nature, the river's flow. In Buddhist teachings, patience is often compared to a river. A river doesn't fight against obstacles, it flows around them. It doesn't hurry to reach the ocean, it moves at its own steady pace. This natural patience teaches us to let life unfold as it's meant to, rather than forcing it to meet our expectations. Practical exercise, patience journal. Start a journal to document moments when you practice patience. Reflect on how you felt in the moment, how patience changed your experience, what you learned from the situation. Over time, you'll see patterns of growth and resilience, motivating you to cultivate more patience in the face of fear. The ultimate reward of patience. Patience doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes how we experience them. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by fear, we develop a calm strength to face life's uncertainties. This shift allows us to approach every moment with equanimity and grace, transforming fear into a teacher rather than an adversary. With patience, fear becomes less of a hindrance and more of a stepping stone toward inner peace and wisdom. Transforming fear through Buddhist wisdom. Fear is a universal experience, one that touches every human life in different ways. However, as the teachings of Buddhism show us, fear is not an enemy to be defeated, but a reflection of our own mind to be understood and transformed. By embracing impermanence, recognizing the illusion of fear, practicing mindfulness, understanding suffering, cultivating compassion, and developing patience, we unlock the tools to dissolve fear's power over us. These lessons are not just theoretical, they are practical, actionable steps that can be woven into our daily lives. When we embrace impermanence, we free ourselves from clinging to what we cannot control. By seeing fear for the illusion it is, we reclaim our courage. Through mindfulness, we anchor ourselves in the present moment, where fear loses its grip. Understanding suffering teaches us that fear is part of the human condition, while compassion helps us dissolve fear with love. And finally, patience gives us the strength to endure fear, knowing that it too will pass. As we journey along the path of Buddhist wisdom, we come to realize that fear is not an obstacle, but a teacher. It shows us where we are stuck, where we need to grow, and where we can find freedom. By facing fear with an open heart and a calm mind, we transform it into a stepping stone toward inner peace and enlightenment. Remember, the process of overcoming fear is gradual, like the blooming of a lotus. With each step you take, you'll notice small shifts: a quieter mind, a braver heart, a deeper sense of trust in life. Let these teachings guide you one mindful breath at a time. May you walk the path with courage, wisdom, and compassion.